One Shot, Episode 4 title. Beneath the water, there's a quiet stretch of the English countryside, about an hour from civilization, where the forests swallow the roads, and the air seems colder than it should be. It was there that we, 3 university mates, Sam, Ben, and me, set out to spend a weekend at a run-down cottage. Ben's cousin had inherited the place, but after a week she left abruptly, refusing to go back. She never said why, but Ben had the keys and a wild idea for an adventure, so we went. The first thing that hit us was the smell. Not a strong one, but a musty dampness that seemed to seep from the earth itself. The cottage sat at the edge of a lake, clear, placid, and unsettlingly dark, once you got past the surface. The trees around it were ancient, their branches gnarled and twisted like hands clawing at the sky. It felt off, but none of us said anything. We were too eager to prove how tough we were, too excited to face the unknown. Inside the cottage was as cold as it was outside. It wasn't the coziest place, wooden floors that creaked, walls stained with watermarks, and furniture that looked like it hadn't been used in years. Ben laughed it off, calling it rustic, and we unloaded the car, bringing in the bags of food and beer we'd packed for the weekend. The first night everything was fine. We drank too much, played cards, and talked about old times at uni. Ben joked that the lake was cursed, and Sam rolled his eyes, calling him an idiot. I laughed along, but something about the lake bothered me. It was too still, too dark, as though it didn't belong to this world at all. We were asleep before midnight, the exhaustion of the day catching up with us. But the sleep didn't last long. I woke up around 3 a.m., cold despite the blankets. Something wasn't right. I could hear something, faint like a distant voice, almost like a whispering under the floorboards. I told myself it was just the wind, or maybe the sound of the lake outside. But deep down I knew it wasn't. The next morning I mentioned it to Sam and Ben, but they shrugged it off. "Old houses make noise," Sam said, pouring himself coffee. "It's probably just pipes or something." But that night it happened again. The same whispering, but louder this time. It felt as though it was trying to form words, something just on the edge of comprehension. I lay in bed, frozen, straining to listen, and then silence, but the silence didn't last. Just as I was about to convince myself I was imagining things, there was a sound outside the window. A splash, like something heavy falling into the lake. I got up, creeping over to the window, careful not to make any noise. I pulled the curtain aside and looked out. The lake was still. Nothing moved, but I could feel it. Something was wrong. I didn't sleep after that. The next day I couldn't shake the unease that clung to me. Ben and Sam didn't seem to notice. They were planning to take the rowboat out on the lake, laughing and joking about scaring each other. I didn't want to go. The thought of being out on that water, with whatever was down there, filled me with dread. I made some excuse about wanting to stay behind, and they didn't push me. I watched from the shore as they rowed out into the middle of the lake. The boat was tiny, just big enough for 2 people, and it looked even smaller against the vast, dark water. They were laughing, splashing each other, oblivious to the way the trees seemed to lean in, as though watching them. I stood there for a while, just watching, when something strange happened. The surface of the lake began to ripple, not from their movements, but from something beneath them. The ripples grew larger, spreading out in perfect concentric circles. I felt my stomach twist. The boat rocked violently, and they stopped laughing. "Ben, Sam," I shouted, but they didn't respond. They were looking down into the water, their faces pale, as though they could see something I couldn't. Then the boat capsized. I screamed their names, running towards the edge of the lake, but I stopped short. The water wasn't splashing or churning as I'd expected. It was still, too still, and there was no sign of them. The boat, upside down, floated lazily, but Ben and Sam, they were gone. Panic set in. I wanted to jump in, to do something, but the thought of that water, black and cold, paralyzed me. Instead, I grabbed my phone, fumbling as I tried to dial for help. No signal. Of course. We were too deep into the countryside. I turned back to the lake, and that's when I saw it. Something was rising out of the water, slow and deliberate. At first, I thought it was one of them, pulling themselves up. But no, it was wrong. It was tall, impossibly thin, and its skin, if it had skin, was slick and black like oil. Its eyes were empty, dark holes in a face that didn't belong to any living thing, that it looked at me. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My mind screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't work. It tilted its head as though curious, and then it slowly slipped back in the water, disappearing beneath the surface without a sound. I waited there for hours, staring at the spot where it had vanished, hoping against hope that Ben and Sam would surface, laughing at some stupid prank. But they didn't, and the sun began to set. I spent the night in the cottage, doors locked, windows shut tight, though I knew it wouldn't stop whatever was in that lake. I could still hear the whispers, louder now, echoing through the walls, through the floor. They sounded like my friends calling for me, pleading with me to help them. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. At some point, exhaustion took over, and I drifted into a restless, feverish half-dream. I saw the lake, vast and endless, stretching out forever. Beneath it, things moved, things that didn't belong to our world. And in the center of it all, there was something massive, something ancient, something that shouldn't exist. It pulsed and writhed as though the lake itself was alive, and in its depths I saw faces. Ben, Sam, others, so many others. I woke up drenched in sweat, heart pounding. It was morning, and the cottage was silent. Too silent. I stepped outside, half expecting to see the lake drained, or the trees twisted into monstrous shapes. But everything looked the same, except for the boat. It was back, floating near the shore, perfectly upright. I didn't go near it. I walked until I found a road, and eventually a car passed, taking me back to the nearest village. I didn't explain what had happened. I couldn't. No one would believe me anyway. That was 3 months ago. I've tried to move on, tried to forget, but the whispers haven't stopped. Sometimes I hear them at night, faint and far away, as though they're calling me back. I haven't told anyone what happened to Ben and Sam. Officially, they're still missing, and I'm sure the police will come knocking soon. But they won't find anything, because I know where they are. They're still there in that lake, beneath the surface, where something waits.